Hey folks, I don't know about you, but 2019 for me was actually, filled with a lot of interesting gaming experiences. There were, of course, new releases on modern systems that I enjoyed, a bunch of new releases on classic systems, also games that were new to me throughout the year. There's a bunch of those I covered as episodes of Beyond the Scanlines, and a bunch more I played in other various ways throughout the year. And rather than just do here are 5 games here are 5 new games I enjoyed, the kind of thing a lot of other channels do, I wanted to sort of reflect a bit on games that were new and new to me, and really sort of talk about them. So this is what I'm calling the 555 project. Is it really a project? I don't know. It's probably something I'm going to do each year, along with State of the Channel. The idea is I want to talk about 5 games that were new in 2019, new releases, both on modern systems and retro ones. 5 games that I enjoyed that were new to me, which they were older games, but games that, due to circumstances, came into my circle that I really sat down, put some time into and enjoyed. And finally, looking towards 2020, 5 games from 2020 that theoretically are going to come out in 2020 that I'm really looking forward to and wanting to check out. I think it's something a little different, and I hope you enjoy it. So I'm gonna roll on with that.
Seeing a series come out of a reasonably long hiatus can always go one of 2 ways. Either it's a spectacular failure, or it's a return to form, as is the case with Ace Combat 7. Mechanically, Ace Combat 7 delivers those aerial moments just as well as its numbered predecessors, and the pace of action truly makes it a joy to play. It also takes advantage of the hardware of this console generation, and the shift to a new engine introduces some neat, if unconventional, mechanics like the impact of flying through clouds on your plane and radar systems. I've always lamented the disappearance of these kinds of flight games over the last few years, and thankfully Ace Combat 7 gives me hope that they'll be able to make a return, even on a smaller scale. And that's before I've even really sat down to try out its PlayStation VR support. There are many independent games which take inspiration from classic computer or console games of the 80s and 90s and build upon them to make something exciting for us all to enjoy. Demon's Tilt is this applied to the classic PC Engine Crush series of pinball games, specifically Devil's Crush. As you'd expect, it's filled with some crisp visuals, great music, and a challenging table layout. I really dig the feel of this game. The ball physics really offer the weight that very few pinball video games kind of get right. And with that table layout on offer, there's plenty of challenge in learning all the tricks and tactics to rack up the highest of scores. It's an incredibly well-polished experience, especially with neat bonuses on offer, like being able to rotate the game into Tate mode for a more accurate pinball experience. When you consider that Neutron was my pick of the entries in the 2019 RGCD 16K game combo, then, well, it's no surprise that it's going to make an appearance here. It's not going to contribute much in the originality stakes, being very heavily inspired by arcade classic Star Force. But what it brings to the table is its outstanding execution. The controls are tight, there's no slowdown or visual problems, and it's just as challenging as its arcade inspiration. Neutron is a great example of pick-up-and-play gameplay, and is more than thrilling enough for some shmup action when you're in the mood for a quick fix of gaming fun. I tend to not really spend a lot of time with open world games these days, at least with my modern gaming tastes. Those giant maps laden with sparse objectives and no real sense of threading as to how one should progress through the story, and it really means that I generally find myself lost, and when I have small moments of gaming time available, the result is that I tend to feel that I'm not really making progress. That isn't the case with The Outer Worlds. Its compacted worlds make for a more enjoyable stroll through its story, and with its charming writing, there are plenty of moments where you're going to be throwing a bit of a chuckle as you slowly work your way to restore some order to the Halcyon colony. It's not one that you can burn through in a short period of time. In fact, it was quite a long time for me to beat it, but if you don't mind the slower pace of the gameplay, and its more compact world over some of its inspirations, it's one which I really felt was a great story to tell, and a really feel-good feeling by the end of it. Certainly, it's won me over. I know it hasn't won others over. Much like with Neutron, the inclusion of Xenocrisis should not be a surprise here. It's one of those games which I felt really pushed something which is important to me when it comes to new games for old systems. A sense of modern design applied to mechanics of the era. From the pacing of its action, its excellent visuals, and that spectacular soundtrack. All of these are elements which make it a sublime experience to play through. The challenge makes for one you'll really want to improve at in order to get further and further inside Outpost 88 to see if you can stop the threat which has enveloped the colony. An absolute joy of a game, which goes to show indie developers can make some outstandingly thrilling experiences, even on 30-year-old games hardware. The PC Engine's library of shmups is legendary, and that's just from those released on Hue cards. The CD add-on also brought a number of great ones to the platform, and Gate of Thunder is one of those more notable ones for me. It was one which I hadn't really played before until it came up as a pick in my gaming group's Game of the Month, and I'm really glad it was. It may not be as frenetic as many later installments in the genre, but that early 90s feel it offers, which is more focused on dealing with swarms of enemies over stupendous numbers of bullets. There's also this neat mechanic where you can flip the firing direction of your attachments that you get when powered up. It really makes handling enemies which attack you from behind that bit less painful. What I also love as well is there is a really solid difficulty curve here, and it makes it far more approachable than many others that came out around the same time. Granada is a game that I'd originally saw covered by another video producer a very long time ago, and when watching it, the producer wasn't really impressed by it. But it oddly stuck around in my head, and as I got reminded about it this year, it's one I really sat down with and absolutely fell in love with, particularly because it plays quite a bit differently from many other action games of the era, and this really carries over into the variety of levels you'll battle through. Sure, they offer the same objectives, but the variety with where you'll be fighting, from cities to a giant spacecraft and more cities and desert areas, there's a lot of variety in there, and it makes it very much a different kind of shooter. And it's one that I think is kind of underrated. It's a really challenging game, really put together nicely, and it's got a cracking soundtrack as well. As we saw when I covered Sentinel on the channel a few months ago, I'm quite the fan of space combat games. Whether it's more involved simulations like we'd get on 16-bit computers and beyond, or just more relaxed takes, especially those in the mood of the Atari classic Star Raiders. And that's really where Starluster fits. Namco's twist on the formula is a little simplified compared to that original game, especially with how your ship systems operate, but this also ramps up the pace as you take on the hostile forces, which threaten not just your starbases, but planets as well. The adventure mode it offers as its third game mode is a neat addition. It's not just about taking out those enemy threats, but also the need to locate the clues in order to find their central base. Locating it and taking it out is really how you'll learn the best ending. It's a mode which is one of the first real evolutionary steps for the genre. It goes beyond the groundwork which many games followed when cribbing Star Raiders. Unlike the other games which I've talked about in this piece so far, Super Castlevania 4 isn't new to me, but when it got a Game of the Month pick in our group again, I finally took the chance to sit down to give it some serious playtime. The slow pacing of character movement has always been something unique to the series, and it's really where the challenge is as you negotiate your way through the levels. What I really dig with it is the more flexible attack patterns, in that your primary whip can be in any of 8 directions instead of just in front of you. It's still a slow attack, and it still offers limited range, but it's a small enough improvement to the gameplay which really tilts things that bit closer in your favour. Along with the addition of a password system which honestly meant I could go back and chip my way a bit further at a time, and being an adult professional with limited gaming time, it's something I well and truly appreciate. I think the moral of the story is, get yourself a good gaming group and you'll really sit down and be motivated to check out some interesting games as well. Whilst I may have spent plenty of time with the Commodore 64 incarnation of Super Monaco GP as a kid, this Mega Drive version is quite a different beast. The main mode itself is closer to the arcade original than these home computer ports, and there's plenty of challenge involved in qualifying as high up on the grid as you can, then to subsequently take the checkered flag. Granted, I've really been focusing on playing the arcade mode, not the championship mode, which is an original feature here, and that of course gives you an entire season with plenty of courses to race through. And seeing the general mechanics here being expanded on is quite a great deal, especially because it keeps true to the arcade spirit, which is something that Sega did quite a few times with other early conversions to the Mega Drive. Super Hang-On's probably one of the more famous ones. There's a moment when you just see the first clip released for an upcoming game, and your jaw just drops to the ground. That's exactly my response when I stumbled across Arcagus Revolution, particularly because of what it is doing with the Mega Drive hardware. The rotation effects you see aren't something which really comes easy to the machine, so it is quite the technical accomplishment that it is smooth, fast, and sleek. Now this one has a small demo which is available to download, some of which you're seeing in action, and I really think you should give it a chance, download it, give it a try, and see if it's something you'll enjoy. Its frenetic action is quite a good challenge, and it makes it for something very unique amongst other games, especially new developments for the system. I really enjoyed my time playing the demo, and I really feel like it's shaping up to be quite an exciting release for sure, and one that I know I'm absolutely going to check out when it ships. Minute is an action-adventure game originally released for modern systems back in 2018. But we're talking about the C64 version here, which is being demade and published by Thalamus Digital. The basic concept with Minute is that you're stuck in a time loop, where you'll die every 60 seconds. Then you respawn, and you need to learn how to progress further, so you can work your way through the game and be able to spawn further along. The monochromatic visuals are quite appropriate for the 64, and again, the potential that seeing the best 8-bit micro, which can get these adaptations of modern games, and some cases potentially improve on them, is something that's really exciting. It's the kind of game that really feels great to play in small bursts, and it's going to be really fun to play it on the C64, I think. It's enough that I've sort of stopped playing it on modern systems, instead waiting for that version. I rather enjoyed the original Moonspire on its release in 2016. This sequel originally started out as an expansion pack of sorts, but after some reworking, it grew out in its own way, and I think it's become all the better for it. Now, I think it's sort of the thing where some people might think sometimes a sequel really needs to add upon things or remix things or do more, but when you've got mechanics as solid as they were with the original game, quite frankly, I don't really think it needs to change much. Moonspire was a great exploratory shooter, and I thought it really did its things quite well. So Moonspire 2, really just picking up upon that, I think it's going to absolutely be well worth your time checking out. Again, it's one I'm really looking forward to seeing when it does drop, and hopefully it does happen in 2020. You would have expected it, but new role-playing games for retro computers have certainly become a bit of a thing of late. With Nox Archaeist, it's one in development for the Apple II family, which, though intended for those machines, is also going to be released with an official packaging with emulation for modern Windows and Mac users as well, so you don't necessarily need to fiddle about setting up an Apple II emulator if you really want to check this one out. The team at 6502 Workshop have very much gone down the path of honoring just how the RPGs of the late 80s would have evolved had developments on the Apple II not stopped, if developers hadn't moved on to newer machines and had continued to work on that platform. And it certainly looks the part, feeling classic enough alongside many of the peers, but also taking a lot of mechanics further and looking like an exciting release. I feel this one is going to be great just looking at what they've done so far and with those mechanics, and with it being close for completion, and we get it this year, it's really going to be an exciting one to check out for sure. I'm absolutely enjoying this resurgence for these kind of games, seeing more and more detailed experiences, and I think Nox is going to be a welcomed entry. Neutron may have just taken inspiration from Star Force and executed on it really well, but now with her next game, Sarah Jane Avery has gone above and beyond in producing a horizontally scrolling shooter, which really ramps things up from what has been done before. From what she's shared so far, it is well and truly a candidate for the best original horizontal shooter on the C64, challenging the likes of games like Enforcer for how well the hardware is pushed, alongside the variety of visuals on offer. Now, I'll admit, I know I enjoy my shooters a lot, and I've probably put a few too many on this list in general, but honestly, it's a genre that really is sublime for pick up and play experiences. And Soul Force is a candidate to that, which I can't wait to try out. It looks frenetic, chaotic, and really offers a lot more than many others have done on the C64. It's going to look like a great release and one that I know will be great fun to play, and I'm certainly looking forward to covering it here on the channel in due course. And with that, this installment of the 555 is done. I really enjoyed just highlighting a few games I really enjoyed last year. There absolutely were plenty more that I did, but you know, I've got to keep it brief and not have the list completely full of shooters. I hope you have been inspired to check some of them out. Hopefully you've found a couple of new ones that you've enjoyed as well. And hopefully, like me, there are some great ones you're looking forward to in 2020 as well. If you've got any ones you might think I might want to check out, why not drop a comment down below? Certainly have a look and see whether they're some good picks for sure. As always, thank you all very much for watching and for your support, and I'm looking forward to bringing you Beyond the Scanlines when it returns in another couple of weeks.